Greetings from the Renville County Planter. I have not made a video in a while, so I thought it's time to make another video. So anyway, tonight we are going to make, it's an overnight bread recipe. I've had this book for many, many years. It's a book by Peter Reinhardt, and the title of it is Artisan Breads Every Day. And I used to kind of live in fear of trying to make any recipes out of here because it had some different techniques like stretch and fold and whatnot. And so I was kind of lived in fear of cooking out of this cookbook. So the recipe we're going to make is just plain old lean bread. It's got the four of breaddom: water, flour, yeast, and salt. There's no other additives, no fats, no eggs or milk or cream or butter or anything. It's just the four of breaddom. And with a typical bread recipe, you mix it up and then you let it rise, and then you punch it down, and then you shape it and you let it rise, and then you bake it. And this book, most of all of these recipes in this book, you mix the dough up and then you do a stretch and fold technique, which takes maybe an hour after you get it mixed. And then the strange thing is you put it into the refrigerator overnight and it will finish rising in the fridge. So it's kind of a little different technique than normal bread making. So anyway, I'll go over the ingredients. Okay, in this recipe, and I'll try to find a copy of this recipe and I'll post it in the description. And also I'll try to find, there's a video of Peter Reinhardt out there. It's like he's got a doctorate in bread making, and really an interesting video that he put on, and I'll try to find that and put it into the description. But what we'll start off with 680 grams of unbleached bread flour. Now, how do you know you have 680 grams? Get yourself a digital kitchen scale. Go see Denise at Gourmet Chef or your local drug dealer. They all seem to have these. Next up, 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, and then 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. And this is quick riser right there. It says instant yeast on it. This is a little faster acting than a active dry yeast. And then here he calls his 2 1/4 cups or 510 grams of lukewarm water, meaning 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 Celsius. Now, how do we know that we have water that's 95 degrees? I stuck this into my microwave for just under a minute. It was up to 97. It is now down to 95. So take its temperature. Go see Denise at Gourmet Chef, and she can sell you one of these instant read thermometers. They're quite handy. Okay, that is our ingredient list. The 4 of breaddom: water, flour, yeast, and salt. Now what we're going to do is we will just mix. Actually, I'm going to do this a little different. I'm going to put the water in here first and the yeast. You don't want to get your water too hot because I think it's over 120 degrees. You'll kill your yeast. I'm just going to mix this in here. There's really no need to proof it. Just get it mixed in there really well. And then yeast and salt. You don't want to put the salt in here yet because what salt does in the bread making is it controls the action of the yeast. So you don't want to mix the two of them. So then we'll put our flour right on top. And on top of that, we will put the kosher salt. Next step, sure we're still in the screen there. Take and hook this up. Whoops. I know you're probably thinking, why aren't you using your bread hook? But what we're going to do is mix this for 2 minutes on just low speed. Got my timer here, and we'll click start. Sometimes you got to hold the back of this or it wants to come off. Okay? Okay, our 2 minutes of TV time have passed. So now what we're going to do is move that back a little bit. We're just going to take and work this off of the paddle attachment. Work as much of that off as you can. And then we're going to cover it with a towel for 5 minutes once we get all this goop off of here. Okay, 5 minutes of TV time has gone by. So what we are next going to do, take a little bit of olive oil and pour that right onto your counter. Doesn't have to be a whole ton of it. And then just take and smear that around. So we have a nice little oil slick here. It's going to help keep our dough from sticking to the counter. You hate it when you don't get enough paper towels. Okay. Now, take our dough, spread it out onto the countertop, onto the top of the oil. Get all that goodness out of there. Okay, now our next step, it's called stretching and folding. And I'm just gonna use a bench scraper and oil it up. Work your way underneath it. Pull it. Put it on top. We'll do the same thing. We're kind of pulling and stretching. Okay. Same thing over here. And over on the side, stretch and fold, and then flip it over and just kind of tuck it into a ball like that. That's all you got to do. Now we are going to cover this with film de plastique, in other words, saran wrap. Or if your my mother-in-law, she says sarin wrap, so it makes it sound like sarin gas, something deadly. So we will cover that up, and then set our timer for 10 minutes. And we will come back and do that very same procedure again. So we will end up doing this a total of 4 times. And then we'll go into the bowl overnight. So take a break for 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes of TV time have gone past, so we'll take that off. And once again, I guess I can start from the back this time. Take and stretch it. from this side, stretch it. Take it from this side here, stretch it, and this side, stretch it, put it on top, and then flip it over. Kind of form it into a ball. This oil definitely keeps it from sticking to your hands. You can see there's little bubbles already starting to form. It means your yeast is going to town. Okay, we will cover this back up again and go another 10 minutes. This is the stretch and fold technique. Let's see, paper towel. Okay, another 10 minutes of TV time has gone by. You can see it almost looks like it's starting to puff a little bit. You can start to see little holes in there, or bubbles. It means your yeast is kind of starting to work. We'll flatten it just a little bit. We'll take and again stretch and fold. And stretch and fold. Stretch, and fold, and stretch. I guess we're not trying to tear it, but stretch and fold, and then flip. And again, try to make it into a little ball. As you can see, each time we do this, it's like it's getting a little bit firmer. You know, with each stretch and fold, so we're getting more and more gluten formation. Okay, and we will cover this back up for another 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, another 10 minutes of TV time have passed by. We'll get rid of the sarin wrap, as my mother-in-law calls it. Flatten that just a little bit. Kind of spread things out. And this will be our fourth and final stretch and fold. Okay, reach the sides, kind of stretching the gluten, and flip it on its, hang on a second, I'm going to get just a little more oil in the middle here. Okay, and we'll form this into a ball. I think what scared me about bread for the longest time is, you know, it can be very sticky. And just the texture of it and trying to work with it and stuff. Now I'm gonna just work this, get a little surface tension going on here. I think that's what kind of scared me about bread making, is just, but trust me, the more you play with it, the easier it's going to become. And now the next step, we're going to lube up a bowl and plop this into it. I'm just going to flip it upside down, get a little oil on that side. Okay. And then I think that some of the purpose of why he does this technique of the overnight rise in the fridge is kind of a time, somewhat of a time-saving thing, because of the bulk of the rising is going to be happening when you're sleeping, and so you can put a little bit of time in it at night, and then finish it on another day. Now, I think it is recipe or in the cookbook. With this dough, I think you can go up to about 4 days. You know, get it ready just like we've done here, and stash it into the refrigerator. And you can go up to 4 days, just leaving it sit there without it losing any quality. So anyway, we will come back to this tomorrow. Well, good morning. It's now day 2, today's baking day. I just crawled out of bed. As you can tell, I have not put my makeup on yet. I pulled the dough out of the refrigerator. Now, your first instinct is to probably think, gosh darn, sitting in the fridge cold all night, these yeast aren't going to do a darn thing. You're going to have bread that has not risen, but you'll be amazed at what you see. This is fresh out of the refrigerator overnight. What you want to do is pull this a couple hours before you intend to bake. And what I'm going to do is just lightly oil the countertop. And we're going to take and flip this out, right like that. Let's see. I'll just use this. Now, we don't want to totally smash this down, but you want to kind of make it into a rough rectangle. The other beauty of doing the bread this way is, unlike a lot of dishes, you don't have to sit here and watch it and observe it and see what it's doing, and you can kind of do your thing and walk away, and the little yeasties are going to do what they need to do, whether you're standing there or not. So I'm going to get this shaped, and while it's rising, I can go get in the shower, or I can go back to bed, or I can go to the store and buy stuff I need. You can go mow your grass, watch TV, maybe have a Bloody Mary for breakfast. No, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, so we've got this somewhat into a rectangle. I can't find a clean pizza wheel, so I'm just going to use this spatula. I got my bench scraper in the oven, or in the dishwasher, I mean. Okay, so we're going to split that into 2. Now, before we do the next step, these are called bannetons. I got these at Gourmet Chef. Go see Denise downtown. They're kind of it's a wood, almost like a wicker basket that's been stapled together in rings, and that's what we're going to get this to rise in. And the way that we're going to prep this is just to spray it with a little bit of oil, and then lightly hit it with some flour, and that's going to prevent the bread, hopefully you can see that, it's going to prevent the bread from sticking. Okay, now I'm going to shake out the excess. Okay, and now we're just going to take our bread, kind of pinch it in on itself here, and then flip it over. I'm going to find a clean spot on the counter. Can you still, oops, let's turn this. Kind of roll it underneath like that. Then we're going to roll it into a ball. Get that surface tension on there. Okay, see we got a nice ball. And then just take and flip that upside down into the banneton. Okay, I will get the other one ready and then we'll proceed. Okay, now we have both of our loaves shaped. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to turn my oven on to 350 for 1 minute and then shut it off, and I'll put these inside the oven, and I'm just going to lay this dish towel over the top, and then we're going to let it rise for at least an hour, and then take the dish towel off and let it go for another hour, and maybe even more, just depending upon how much it's risen. And then we'll crank on the hot box and we bake. So again, the beauty of this is I'm going to sit down and have a cup of coffee while this is rising. All right, a couple of hours have gone by. We let the bread rise, covered with a dish towel for an hour. Then I took the dish towel off and let it rise for another hour in just a slightly warmed up oven. Now it's time to crank on the hot box, so we will crank the oven up as high as she'll go to 550. And you know, again, the beauty of this recipe is while the yeast are doing their thing, you can be off doing other things. I've had coffee and read the paper and brushed my teeth and shaved. Now while the oven's heating up, I'm going to go take a shower. So you can multitask while the bread is doing its thing. So we'll turn the oven on to 550. The other thing we're going to do, we're going to bake this bread on a pizza stone. And this is an old Alton Brown trick, to take the bottom of an unglazed terracotta pot and use that as a pizza stone. And the pan underneath, we're going to be baking this in kind of a steam bath, so we will be placing a little bit of water in there. And whether you are cheap like me and use a terracotta pot, or if you actually get a pizza stone, the one thing you want to do is preheat that with your oven. Don't stick it into a hot oven. So anyway, otherwise it just might crack and break on you. So anyway, we will heat up the oven for 45 minutes. Okay, the bread's been rising for about 2 hours and 45 minutes. You know, sometimes when you're letting bread rise, it isn't so much concerned about time as look at your dough and see what it's doing. You know, that it's doubled in volume and that. So anyway, and I'm all cleaned up, got my makeup on. I forgot to mention, I also did some laundry while this stuff was rising. So again, you can multitask when you're making this recipe. Okay, let's come right down here. The next step we're going to do, we want to use parchment paper. There is a difference between wax paper and parchment paper. Do not use wax paper. Think crayons if you're thinking wax paper. We want to be using parchment paper. So what we're going to do is cut a piece approximately the size of our loaf. Now, I used to own a pizza peel, but I dropped it, and so anyway, I'm going to use the back of a baking sheet. So what we're going to do, now hopefully if we floured this up well enough, we're just going to take and flip this over, and then the bread will come right out of the banneton, and we were successful in that. So now I'm going to take and move this over to here, and that is going to allow us to slide it onto the baking stone. We'll just cut off a little bit of the excess there. Now the next step we want to do, take a serrated knife and just lightly without trying to crush it too much. Cut holes into the crust, and what that's gonna, there's a lot of water in this dough, and what that's gonna do is allow the for oven spring, it's going to expand, and that's going to allow that to happen. Okay, now we're ready to stick this in the oven. Okay, we are ready to stick this into the oven. Very, very hot. Let's try to get that to slide off of there and get in there. Now we want to cook this in somewhat of a steam bath, so we're going to use, we have 1 cup of hot water, and that is going to provide steam as this cooks. And now the recipe says to drop the temperature to 450. Oops. Let me get this up to 450. And then we cook it for roughly, I'm not going to rotate it in there. Where is it? 10 to 12 minutes plus. So approximately 27 minutes or so. We're going to cook that in the oven. So, okay, our bread just pulled out of the oven. I let it go probably about 28 minutes. Now you want to cook this to a temperature to 200 to 205 degrees. And the best way to know if you've done that, again, we will take its temperature. And right now, I'm at about 206, 207 degrees. So this is definitely done. And I will get the other loaf into the oven, and we will make that. Now, you want to let this cool for about an hour before slicing. And, you know, with it being a lean dough, it's got more of a toothsome feel to it. It isn't a soft bread. This stuff is wonderful toasted with butter and jelly on it. But I wish you could smell this, because my house smells really, really good right now. So anyway, you too can do this at home. Don't be afraid of bread making. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and enjoy your fruits of your labor while you cook. Have a good day.